Hey everyone, and welcome. It's Sherry from the Trail Runner's Journey Show, TRJ Live, episode 16, the West Coast Trail with Rhonda Daniluk. Oh, we're going to talk about that. We are live. Yay! We're live. We made it here. We're live on Facebook. I don't see me yet, but we're just going to go with it because it'll get there eventually. So welcome to the Trail Runner's Journey, the TRJ live show. I'm Sherry Donahue. I'm an ultra runner and coach with Trail Runner's Journey. And we're all about, when you get older, you hear, oh yeah, you better slow down and stuff like that. No, we're not about that. We are not about slowing down. We're not about, when you get older, no. We're not doing that. We're finding out how to maintain your health and vitality for the longevity. And the thing is, one thing with the longevity is to have something, you have to have a purpose. What are you going to work towards? What are you going to work towards as a goal? So today we're going to talk about the West Coast Trail. And for those that don't know the West Coast Trail, that is on the west side of the Vancouver Island. So that's on the big ocean side. The Pacific Coast Trail goes from Washington down to California. That's the Pacific Coast Trail. This is the West Coast Trail. And my friend Rhonda on here, she just got back from hiking it. And she said it was epic. It was totally epic. Mark in the comments went and said, yeah, it was one of the most pivotal things of his life. So yeah, it was fantastic. So yeah, let's get started here. And yeah, Rhonda, let me know. Tell me a bit about yourself and how you started, where are you starting from in the fitness thing? Because most of my audience are runners and hikers, pretty much walkers. So yeah, do tell you a little bit about yourself and what you do and your fitness background.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll start now. Basically, I am a fitness coach, nutrition coach. And so when it comes to my own fitness, I have a fairly balanced approach. So I do a lot of walking. I do mostly weight training, sprinkle some cardio in there, but I used to be a runner. And I actually stopped running because of IT band issues. And that kind of just pushed my focus into more weight training and found different ways to stay active that way. And I did run when my kids were really, really small, and it was a really big social part for me. I loved it was like every Friday morning, us moms went for a run, and it was a way for us to connect and stay active together.
And that totally is common, especially for a lot of young mothers, is to, pack up the stroller with the kids and away you go. It's a big social time for you.
I actually did it. Friday mornings were my no kids run. I would leave the kids at home with my husband, and it would just be the moms without kids, and we'd be able to just gab away and get our run in. So it was really good that way.
Oh, awesome. So now you've got Healthy Concepts and Wellness with a WAG. Can you tell me about that, please?
Yeah, so Healthy Concepts, my company is designed to help dog moms find their magic in the chaos of life with kids and all of those things. And how we do that is through connection, fitness, and food. And so the wellness, Workouts and Wellness with a WAG is my Facebook group. So it's just a cute name that basically lets you know what we're all about. And so people are able to join that, ask questions, get information about how you can work out with your dog, parts of your your wellness plan, like more information about food and nutrition and what foods are going to fuel your body to be able to do the things you want in your life, instead of sitting back and watching your kids do all of the activity. It's like, how do we get in there and be present and enjoy our lives with our whole family?
So does a person have to be an active runner to work with you, or how can they come in? Like if somebody is sitting there and they have their little poochie in their arms and like, well, I'm not sure if I can actually, what would I could she work with you?
Yeah. So all of my plans are customized to the individual and the individual's needs. So for some of my clients, their plan basically just incorporates walks with their dogs as part of their plan. Whereas I have other clients who every single activity in their day, in their weekly workouts, include their dog as well. So what people often will ask me is we think about the traditional ways to work out with our dogs, like hiking and running and taking them swimming, things like that. Whereas I actually am a certified canine fitness instructor. So basically everything that you would learn as a personal trainer for humans, it's adapted to building plans for dogs. So we do squats, we do push-ups, we build the dog full balance, so that they are strong not just in their front end but also their back end. So it's very injury preventative plans, and it focuses on strength training, flexibility, cardio, and a big piece of that is the mental aspect as well. Just like it is for us when we exercise, the mental piece of it, it's also really wonderful for our dogs' mental health as well.
That is so interesting. That is so cool. So you're training not only the mother or even the dad who if dad wants to go in there. It's like it's your training partner. Your dog is your training partner.
Yeah. And I don't know, for everybody who's ever had a dog or has a dog, will they ever turn you down if you want to go do something?
Oh God, no.
They're also very motivating, right? Because you're like, well, I got to take the dog for a walk. And what do you do when it's minus 40 or plus 30? It can
Yeah.
be really hard to exercise our dogs in those temperatures and exercise ourselves in those temperatures. So I also help you to learn how to be able to exercise your dog in a very small space.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Oh, all right. So, okay, so the West Coast Trail, you just did that with your husband, the West Coast Trail. So, give the audience why the West Coast Trail and where did you hike? Did you hike northbound to southbound or south, like which way did you go with that one? So,
Yeah.
why the West Coast Trail?
So, kind of a funny story. I remember a friend of mine telling me about the West Coast Trail back probably when I was early 30s. So, my kids were really young. And I remember thinking to myself, why on earth would anyone ever want to do that? That sounds crazy. Yeah. And I was like, no, like that sounds terrible. And life changes. We have new life experiences. We look for challenges. I look for challenges for myself. And another friend of mine did the trail with her husband last summer, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. And that's truly what it was. Like it was just she did it. I saw her experience. She told me all about it, and I was like, I am in. This is amazing. And so I brought it up to my husband, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. Like no hesitation. We've never done a backpacking trip before, so I will say that we always want to make sure that we do things as safely as possible. However, we jumped in with both feet on this one, and they do recommend experienced backpackers, and I understand why. But I think if you can be really prepared in your training and what you have with you, um, you can safely do it if you are fully prepared. Either way. But yeah, no, my husband was like, yeah, I've been wanting to do this sort of thing for a long time, and let's do it.
Okay, so you mentioned something fully prepared because everyone has really a different view of fully prepared. What does fully prepared look like?
Yeah, so for us, it was a lot of research into what we needed for basic survival, because you're in the middle of nowhere. Essentially, there are three entrance or exit points along the trail, and if you need to get off the trail in between there, the only way to get off the trail is to be rescued. And so depending on where you are on that trail, it can take over 24, 48 hours for someone to be able to get to you.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so there was a lot of safety considerations that we had to have in mind, making sure we were physically prepared for it, which in hindsight, I would say we weren't as physically prepared as we could have been. only because we were not fully prepared for what the trail brought us in terms of like, it was a very technical trail. It was more of an obstacle course than a hike.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And
And
until you've done it, I don't know if you can fully appreciate it, to know it's like, okay, this would have helped me be more prepared, because you're like, okay, now I know what needs to be done. So when I say fully prepared, we were not fully prepared for that part of it. And I do know I would change some of the things in my training plan from what I did. Walking in sand, hiking in sand with a loaded backpack is something I didn't prepare for, I guess. So lots of calf raises would have come into play in preparation for that, and maybe even walking in sand wherever I could find it in advance would have been really helpful as well.
gotcha. And so did you hike north to south or south to north?
We did north to south, based on, again, there's a really fantastic Facebook page that is a wealth of information. And also our friends did it that way as well. So the north end of the trail is technically the easiest part of the trail. And so when you have your heaviest pack, doing the easiest part of the trail was kind of what we were thinking as a bonus. Whereas the first part of the trail with a very heavy pack is very, very challenging. So we chose to go with the easy to the hard, so we'd have a lighter pack at the end.
Okay, good point. Good point. So in your prep, you mentioned you did do some physical preparation. What exactly, how did you prepare for this? And you had a little bit of a concern going into this, didn't you?
Yeah, so I started my training actually last September, just with some modifications to my fitness program. My coach just kind of set things up and, started some weighted step ups and just some basic movements, to be honest, but just making sure I was increasing that weight and increasing the intensity and the duration. But about a week before we left on the trail, I had my first experience with plantar fasciitis.
No.
Yes. So now I say that I did have some foot pain, probably off and on, for about 3 months beforehand, but it wasn't significant. It didn't stop me from doing anything. Um, so I didn't really, there were no red flags for me about it. I just kept doing my regular training. Um, Actually, rewind a little bit. I had slightly sprained my ankle in the fall. And I actually think that potentially was the cause of the plantar fasciitis, just with the way the pain was in my foot. But yeah, so the week before I was like, oh wow, like this is quite painful, and how am I going to manage this with like a loaded pack for 7 days? So I called my massage therapist, and she got me in for 2 sessions of just really working through my calves, my feet. I taped it with some KT tape. I rested as much as I could without like complete rest beforehand. And the biggest piece was from a fellow coach that is a good friend of mine. I sent him a message. He really focuses on recovery from injury. That's his niche. And he really said, like, here are the things you can do, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to your mindset. And
Ooh, oh, let's rewind that one. At the end of the day, it comes down to your mindset. Oh,
yeah,
that's rich.
it really is. And he has taught me actually quite a lot. So Stephen, if you're watching this, shout out to Stephen. He really has taught me a lot about pain and working through injuries, because if anybody has ever encountered an injury, which is almost everyone, often doctors will tell you rest, don't move. Oh, I'm giving you a thumbs up. Stop moving, stop aggravating it.
Yeah.
But he actually has this really great system, and I've shared it before with my followers too. And it's a pain scale basically, and it's your red light, green light, yellow light. So if your pain, and I might have these numbers off a little bit, so forgive me if I am. So like 1 to 4 is your green light. So you're good to continue with your activity. You're going into that 4 to 7. That's your yellow light. So kind of proceed with caution. So we might have to modify things. We may have to regress a little bit, drop weight, less or less progressive. What's the word I'm looking for? Say instead of a on your toes push up, we're going to drop to the knees or do an incline push up, for instance. You're going to regress that a little bit. And then your red light is 7 and up. It's like, okay, we need to do something here that, yes, stop and make sure that we're not going to make this worse. So thinking about that made a huge difference, because I was like, okay, well, my pain is still in that green light, maybe the odd time in the yellow light. So I can proceed. I can be smart about it. I have the exercises that I need to do. And so that has been it was very helpful. And the other side of it is when it comes to the mindset. So funny enough, while you're walking in sand, I feel like you heel strike a lot more, which brings your toes up, which stretches out your calves. So as I was walking through the sand, which was hard on my calf muscles, but I just kept saying to myself, I'm stretching out my calves. I'm stretching out my calves. And so my plantar fasciitis actually got better as time went on the hike. And it was purely putting my feet in ice cold creeks as I was going. I had my KT tape and I would massage my feet. I had muscle cream. I did stretches every morning. So very basic, and I just carried on, and it was totally fine.
It was totally that's really interesting. It was totally fine, because a lot of times plantar can be a nasty, but there's also something you're in a beautiful, beautiful place, and the endorphins you're in nature. It's also the rush of dopamine and oxytocin. You've got the feel good hormones going on, and you've got the feel goods, and they're also natural painkillers.
Yes, I will say I did take Advil as well.
Okay.
As I was going. So I will say I did have pain meds on board for sure. And I took them as precautionary measure. I would take them prophylactically. Yes, there were times I needed it. Like there was pain, but it was basically just twice a day. I took my Advil just to stay on top of it. I also took magnesium with me. So I took magnesium, and I had a fish oil anti-inflammatory as well. So I was taking things on top of just, the mindset work. It wasn't just, it was a magical hike, but it wasn't quite like 100% holistic, I will say.
Well, and the thing is, yeah, you do what you have your things for management, but this actually being out and with the magical, how magical it was, heightened everything for that. And speaking of magical, what are the highs from the West Coast Trail?
The highs, oh my gosh, they're plentiful. The scenery is something it was magical. Like everything about it was, I don't even know. The only word I can use to describe it is magical. The mist, the sun coming in, the waves crashing, looking out at the ocean and seeing 5 or 6 blowholes going off at a time. And we probably saw hundreds of whales on our hike. And you know what? I'm going to talk about the people side of it. The people we met, that was a highlight. The experience of sitting after everybody has set up camp, everyone's kind of sitting in front of their tent in the sand, looking out at the ocean, and just noticing that everybody was connected to nature and disconnected from everything else. They were just, it was the most peaceful thing I've ever encountered,
Oh
experienced.
wow.
Hmm.
Oh wow. So in the scenery, like is it like great big tall trees and lots of lushness and
Yeah, so it's rainforest. So you've got
okay.
big redwoods. It's okay. So I don't know if people remember this movie. Do you remember Fern Gully?
I know what I've never seen it, but I
It,
remember hearing about
it's
it.
I think probably from the 80s. And it's set in a rainforest, and there were so many times I was like, I feel like I'm in Fern Gully. It was so beautiful. But yeah, and slugs, like giant slugs, they're crazy. I've never seen those sorts of things. We saw a couple snakes. The eagles, I've never seen an eagle the size that,
Wow.
like, this eagle, my husband joked, he's like, it could just pick you up and take you away if you didn't have a heavy backpack on. Like, we didn't see any bears, but we're pretty
I was
sure
going
we
to
had
ask
one.
about that. Did you see any bears?
Yeah, we're pretty sure we had one alongside the trail with us, because all of a sudden there was a lot of like movement in
Hmm.
the trees, and really, of the animals that are on that you can encounter on the hike, a bear would be the one that would make that much of a disturbance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to ask the question that a lot of times it's asked for any ultras. Do I have to carry bear spray?
Yes. So
You heard this here, folks. Yes, carry your bear spray.
I love that you asked me this question, because I cracked up, because it's probably about 50% of the people on the West Coast Trail Facebook page that say you don't need bear spray, and 50% of the people that are like, you need bear spray. So I live in northwestern Alberta, and I live in bear country. I take bear spray with me when I walk every day. And because we have bears, and they're black bears. And that was the most interesting thing. A lot of the people that we spoke to were like, they're just black bears. You don't have to worry about black bears. Like, yeah, you do. They can still do things that you don't want them to. They very curious, and that's what gets them in trouble, which could put you in trouble. So yes, if you're in bear country, always carry bear spray.
Yeah. Now, when we chatted earlier, you had mentioned there was a couple really cool people that you met on the trail.
Yes. Okay. Who are you talking about? Because I've met a lot of really cool people.
Ah, longevity.
Oh, yes. Yes. So, while I was on the trail, I actually crossed paths with a woman who has been on the trail 14 times, and she's 77.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hear that,
Insane.
folks? Yeah, hear that? Like, no, 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 not this 50. You're getting into 50. I'm getting too old for this stuff. No, 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 no. 77, and she's been on there 14 times. Okay, dropping me in the chat if you've been on the West Coast Trail, if you want to go on the West Coast Trail, or you're liking what you're hearing. So, yeah, carry on.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we didn't cross paths with another woman who was on the trail, but an 8-year-old woman did half the trail while we were there, but we had already passed the point that she entered on. So we didn't get to actually see her. But her
An
son,
80-year-old as well, too.
yeah, so her son did carry her pack for her. So she didn't have a weighted pack. But I'm telling you, like, the step ups and the step downs and the gnarly terrain that you have to navigate, um, it doesn't matter whether you have a pack or no pack. It's an amazing feat to accomplish, whether you're 80 years old or 8. And we
No
did see a
kidding.
6-year-old on the trail as well.
Oh, wow. And actually, one of the other girls that I'll be interviewing in September for her race, they did it as a family. They did the West Coast Trail as a family. Cool. Oh, man. An 80-year-old and a 77. So much for leaving it for the younger generation. I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
and we
don't.
actually saw that. The one thing that I will say is it doesn't matter your body type, your age, your gender. Like, it doesn't matter if you have your heart set on it and you can train for it and be prepared. You can do it.
Oh, that's awesome. So we went for the highs. What were the lows of the trail?
You know what? So I attribute this trail to be similar to giving birth. It's almost like you get amnesia of the lows. But however, I do have some memory of the lows. Um, so the biggest low I would say was the last day, because I think that was when my mindset was kind of like, I'm out, I'm done. And it was the hardest day of the trail on the very last day. It was, and it was, so all of the trail markers for anybody who has done it or plans to do it, they're not accurate. They're as the crow flies. So a lot of the time, like, so the last day is supposed to be 6K. 6K is a piece of cake, right? Like, that's no big deal. It was 9K. Also, typically when we go for a hike and do 9K, I'm like, yeah, no big deal. This was the most challenging in terms of like roots and stumps. And it's not just like the odd root or stump, it's just like root, 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 root. Like you're trying to find spots to put your feet because there's so many roots. There's a bunch of switchbacks right at the beginning that are quite treacherous. If it was raining, it would be quite the challenge to get up or down those slopes. Yeah, it was just very, very challenging. We did get off the trail twice on our last day, which was a little bit nerve wracking. But in the end, like that last day, as hard as it was, you still have the highlight of saying you completed it at the end.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I'm gonna fold this over like an ultra. There's times where it is tough. There's times where you lose your stuff. And it is a roller coaster. It really is. And the thing is, the roller coasters, they're not necessarily at the end. They could be anywhere and you could have many of them. But when you're done, it's like, oh, that was the worst race and I'm signing up again. and, yeah, that's how it goes. And it's just basically you embrace the pain, you embrace the suck, because that's part of the whole journey and that's where you grow. So what was your best memories of this whole adventure?
Okay, so I had like a whole day that was my favorite. And that was I can't remember which campground it's from. So it was day 4 for us, and our campground was the Walbrand Creek. So day 3 was the day we got to do the crab shack, which is where you stop and you get to have crab that's just picked right out of the ocean and cooked fresh, and halibut that was caught the day before. Incredible. So this trumped it, even that, and there was a dog on that part of at the crab shack, so that was like a highlight for me too. But day 4 had the most beautiful scenery. It was an easy beach walk for a good chunk of it, where we could just enjoy the sounds of the ocean. You can see the Carmana Lighthouse, which is supposed to be like, there's like this epic shot between I can't think of the right words right now. They're the sea. It's where there's like rocks that kind of jet up, and there's like, anyways, can't think of the right word of them right now. But once you get so far past this lighthouse, you turn around and you can look back, and the lighthouse is framed by these big sea. They're rocks. They're just giant rocks that have trees on top of them. But yeah, it's just, it was so beautiful. And the start of that day, there was like a mist, and so the sun was coming through that mist, and it was just spectacular. You hit Vancouver Point, which is where you start to see a lot more civilization again. Lots of boats happen at that point, which that wasn't necessarily exciting, but no, I have that wrong. Sorry, guys. We don't hit Vancouver Point till later, but you just, like, it was like something exciting to see at every quarter. Again, it was a hard slog at one point, but it was just beautiful. Like, and the Walbrand Creek was my favorite campsite. So where we were camped, we basically were up on top of like a bit of a hill, not really a hill, but like the shore, like but you're up high above the shore. And so we were looking directly out into the ocean, and they had this beautiful swimming hole that is freshwater. So we spent a good amount of time in this freshwater swimming hole. It was our anniversary that day, so we finally got a chance to crack our rosé that we had carried with us for for 3 days, 4 days. And we got back to that camp, or we made it to camp by 1 in the afternoon. So we just had a very relaxing, chill day that day. It was,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. And so I get, yeah, bring the camera with you, huh?
We just had our phone, but it's amazing the photos you can get with just a phone. But
Oh
the
my
people
gosh,
who
yes.
have good cameras, I'm somewhat jealous, because I would like to blow up some of the photos we have, and I don't know if I can with my iPhone pictures, but
Depending on what megapixel you have, it's a good possibility.
yeah. Yeah, and so day 3 and 4 were probably my biggest highlights, because there was a puppy on day 3, crab, and then day 4 was just relaxing after the big section of hiking. We got up really early that day too, so we got to watch kind of the sun.
So what wildlife did you see? Like you saw the waving of the trees, and you mentioned eagles, and what kind of wildlife did you see on the trail?
So on our first day, we stopped at Sea Lion Rock, which is close to the north end, and we watched the sea lions for a good amount of time, and they are hilarious. Like their life, like how they live their lives. I'm like, what a life to be a sea lion. Like they just look like they're having the greatest time. They fight too, like, but they were hilarious, barking at each other. And but yeah, so we saw tons and tons of sea lions at Sea Lion Rock. We saw a few seals, not a ton of them. We saw a couple snakes, which were just tiny little green
Okay.
snakes. Yeah, they weren't scary. Saw some mice. Yeah. So actually, a lot of people say mice are the biggest threat on the trail, more so than bears.
Really?
Because they're little buggers. They will climb. If you leave your rope on the ground, if by chance you hang stuff, they'll climb up the rope and get in your bag.
Oh.
People have found them, like they'll chew through your tent. We thankfully didn't have that experience. But if you have anything that they think that they can eat, they will find it. Yeah. So our very first night, we camped at Darling River, and I could hear the mice around our tent that night. And then in the morning we were having breakfast, and there's like driftwood logs everywhere. So you have like tables and chairs of like driftwood logs. And so this log was right beside our tent, but kind of was right on the edge of the forest. And so we were getting our breakfast ready, and I was just putting some stuff. I lifted up my bag, and there was a little mouse under my bag. They were everywhere. So we just moved. If you move into the sand, the mice are not there, and you're good to go.
It's kind of like Arizona. You watch out for the scorpions.
Yeah, because they probably get under everything.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know, loud.
Yeah, and I think that's all that we saw. So I think I saw a humpback whale at the Walbrand Creek, which was my favorite campground. Nope, sorry, Cribs Creek. I keep getting them confused. There's so many different places. Because there was a boat that kept coming over, and like they would whip back and forth. So I was like, are they bringing people to see this whale? And when the tail came out of the water, I was like, oh, that is a humpback tail versus all of the gray whales we had seen.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh man. I don't know about any of y'all watching this, but that actually sounds pretty epic. That sounds like a real bucket list item if you haven't got it on your bucket list. Would you agree? Drop it in the chat. And so, okay, so you've done the West Coast Trail. Knowing that what you know now, how would you prepare differently?
So, like I said, I would have done a lot more calf strengthening. I would have gone with a much lighter pack. We actually were told to not finish the trail and get out at the crab shack because of how heavy our packs are, and how difficult that last half of the trail is, or end of the trail. And so we kind of had it in the back of our heads that, you know what, if things are looking like there's just no way we can do it, we would get out of the crab shack because safety was number one for us. But it's like anything. You practice something, you get the reps in, and it feels a lot more comfortable. You gain confidence. And so as we went, my confidence, and my husband was always like good to go. But I did, when someone told me that I probably shouldn't do the end part of the trail, I was like, well, I maybe should listen to the professional, the person who, knows really a lot about this trail. So as the days went on and my pack was lighter and I was feeling more confident in the difficult obstacles, I was like, no, we're good. We can do this. Like it's totally fine. So, it's just one of those things. You don't become an ultra marathoner overnight, right? Where did you start? You have to start somewhere, and your confidence at longer distances builds as you go. So yeah, it always comes back to, like, you have to be a beginner of something always, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yes, absolutely. What you said there is really gold. You're a beginner somewhere, and my beginning part is not the same as your beginning part, which is not the same as your husband's beginning part. And aren't you glad you didn't listen to the professional out there? You
Yeah.
listened to yourself. Yeah, and you did it. And when we were chatting earlier about this, you said there was one exercise you would have practiced, and that was walking a bear walk with your pack on.
Yes, definitely. So the ladders that are like this, I don't know if you can see my hand very well.
Yep, you can. Yep, we can.
It's like for myself. Not everybody feels the same way as I do. My center of gravity seemed more balanced. Now there's ladders that are like this. And you would think, oh, you'd feel really confident because you're not really going on like a really steep angle. But now you're basically bear walking, bear climbing with a pack on. So that was really challenging. And it would be, I'd feel my fatigue a lot faster. I'd have to take a break on the ladder, catch my breath, and then keep going.
Well, that makes sense because women's center of gravity is our hips, whereas men's center of gravity is their shoulders. They're
Yeah.
more, they've got the upper body strength, and their center of gravity is actually higher. So for them to do the more slanted ones, that they would find it easier with us. No, we're fine. We're fine with the straight ups. Well, that's actually really good information. That's really, really quite cool with that. And now that you've done the West Coast Trail, where does it go from here?
Well, so I've already put my sights on Lake O'Hara, which is in Yoho National Park, for next year. Now that's not a backpacking trip. You have to get your spot. You set up your tent and you kind of have base camps and you can hike from there. But I just had went out with one of my best friends last week, and we were talking about it. She's like, okay, I want to do it. I want to do the West Coast Trail with you. And so I didn't fully intend to do it next year, but it sounds like we're probably going to try to do it next year again. So I fully intended to do it again because I would like to do it with a lighter pack and, bring my son along. He's on the fence. Some days he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then other days he's like, no, I don't want to do it. But just to have one of my kids along with me, and now going with my best friend. And yeah, I think it will just be so cool to do it again. And it's going to be a different experience this time around. Just, you never know. The weather could be different.
Sure.
The people you're with, the people you meet, the wildlife you see, like everything, it'll just be a completely different experience.
I don't think it's ever the same experience twice. And actually, I said one of the girls who's going to be in September. Yeah, they've done it, and then they decide to do it as a family. And she said it was just amazing, just special. And yeah, people that have done it that I've talked to, it's definitely an experience to go on for sure. Definitely.
Yeah. So there is a part of the trail that we didn't talk about. So it was like one of the hardest parts of the trail, the part where most of the injuries occur on the trail, and that is Owens Point to Thrasher Cove, which is right at the very end for us because of the way we did it. And so after Owens Point, you go through boulders, and some of the boulders are the size of your house. Like they are insanely huge, these boulders. And so we were going to do the forest route. Then our neighbors peer pressured us into joining them and doing Owens Point. And it was spectacular. And so something always remember, it's your experience and your experience alone, because so many people talk about how scary those boulders are. I was afraid of the boulders, and then I loved them. They were fun. I felt like Spider-Man. It was just, there's still, we only had so much time because of the tide, so you're still kind of rushing, but to know that, I got in there, and it was way different than I had set up in my head.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, I told myself two things. So I had a piece of advice from a friend, the one who did it the year before, which was stay close to shore, and trust your instincts. And that's what I kept telling myself throughout the entire thing. And I would pause and I would just say, like, okay, which way? And sometimes if I doubted myself, I would just pause a little bit longer and I'd be like, okay, no, which way am I kind of feeling is the best path for me? And then I would go with whatever came to mind first.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. So if anybody's waffling on, like, should they or shouldn't they, what other advice would you have other than just do it already?
Well, I would always ask yourself why you're waffling. Like, what is the root of the like, is it fear? Is it doubt that you can do it? Is it like, there's so many reasons, but if it's just a matter of, like, you're going to be able to be physically prepared, you can be, you have your pack prepared, mentally prepared, and it's just pure, like, fear of, can I do it? Just do it. Because most of the time, if you're waffling, you're probably good to go. You just have to.
Oh, did you hear that? If you're waffling, you're probably good to go.
Yeah. You're not there. Like, I will tell you, when I first heard about it, I was like, why would I? There was like a no way I was doing it when I first heard about the trail when I was in my 30s. And then when I heard about it last year, I was doing it. So you just have to kind of trust your instincts and actually listen to what your body's telling you about it, what your heart's telling you about it, because our minds can mess us up a little bit sometimes.
Oh, yeah, they don't call it mind dickery for nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rhonda. This was amazing. This was actually really amazing. And I want to say to the viewers out there, thank you very much. And also, I've got a guest coming in September. As soon as I solidify a time with them, it's Rim to Rim to Rim in Grand Canyon. So that's a show you want to tune into. So Rhonda, I will have your wellness and workouts of wellness with the WAG. I'll have the links in your in the description so people can get a hold of you that way as well too. And if there's with your sports therapist, that was it Stephen?
Yeah.
If he wants to give his contact info, let me know and I'll put it in there as well too. So
definitely. I'll get you Stephen's info.
Perfect. Well, thank you. This was amazing. Everyone, thank you very much. Drop a like, drop a love, share the video, share the love. And yeah, this is keep the adventures epic, because, as we age, but we don't have to get older. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So until next week I'll be talking about Trans-Selkirk. So I'm going to Trans-Selkirk. So I'll be talking a little bit how to prepare for that, for Trans-Selkirk or a multi-day run. So until then, have a good one. Get outside, get some sunshine, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Sherry.